Hello students, as we are doing lesson the modern empire and we were doing its administration. So last topic that we have done in this, that was the provincial administration. So the entire kingdom that was headed by the ruler or the emperor, and that empire was divided into provinces. Then that provinces were further subdivided into districts. Like modern time India is divided into states, and states are further divided into districts for the better administration. Similarly, those provinces were divided into districts, and in that particular districts three classes of high officials were appointed. First was the rajakas, that were the in charge of districts and corresponded to the district magistrate. That means the modern time district magistrates are there. So these rajakas were performing that type of functions during that time. So they managed the state property and kept law and order in the districts. The Yuktas was probably the district treasury. So this was the second official. And he collected the revenues and kept accounts. And Mahamatra. This Mahamatra is the third official. The Mahamatras were heads of the special departments. And it means these three officials were there. And Ashoka created a new class of Mahamatras. That new class was for the dharmas. So those are known, or those were known as the Dharma Mahamatras, and their duty was to promote Dhamma. Dhamma means Dharam, and looked after the general happiness and welfare of the people. So this was their district administration. Similarly, now our districts are divided into cities and villages. So in cities, city administrations are there, and there were also city administration was there. And in Arthashastra it was mentioned the Nagarika, who functioned as a city superintendent or the city magistrate, and with number of officers to assist him. And the duties of Nagarika according to Kautilya, means the duties that are written in Arthashastra, and that Arthashastra is written by Kautilya. So according to Kautilya, their duties were: first, the provision of water to the city dwellers, the maintenance of public roads, public buildings, the inspection of city walls, city towers, and taking cautions against fire. Same that are Nagar Panchayats or municipal committee and municipal corporations are doing. Then Megasthenes wrote a book, Indica. So on Megasthenes, what he said, gave a more elaborate system of city administration. According to him, those interested with city administration were divided into 6 boards of 5% each. It means city administration was divided into 6 boards, and in that each board 5 persons were there, and each board deal with the specific function, that like a supervision of trade and commerce, census of population or care of foreigners, and so on and so forth. Means each and every work related to that city was taken care by them. And the 6 boards acted together in general matters. General matters means like maintenance of public buildings, fire protection, care of wells and temples. These are the general functions. So when we are talking about these general functions, then all these 6 boards were working together. Then the administration of justice. Megasthenes attests to the efficient administration of the criminal law. Serious offenses were visited with death penalty. It means punishment was also given for the law and order. If some type of crime was there, if serious crime was there, death punishment was also there. And for the lighter crimes, they were punished, means the criminals, they were punished by cutting off the nose or shaving off offenders' hair, and a penalty that made one feel ashamed. And evasions of taxes means if someone is avoiding to pay taxes or not paying the taxes on goods that are sold, or of a municipal cesses means on goods, or if he is not paying the taxes under municipal cesses, like in we are also having municipal cess, that was regarded as a serious offense. It means not paying or avoiding to pay the taxes was a serious offense, and laws concerned with crimes were very severe and punishment were exceptionally harsh. Means they were just to maintain law and order, just to maintain the peace. Laws were there, and for that kind of serious crimes serious punishments were also there. Then is the peace and good order. Peace and contentment prevailed throughout the empire. As I told you, for the law and order and peace, laws were there, and for crimes and those who were breaking that kind of law and order, serious punishments were there. So everything was around the peace and law and order of the city, or simply we can say in the empire. So peace and contentment prevailed throughout the empire. Theft was a rare occurrence. It means no one was there that to whom we can say a thief. Although houses were usually left unguarded, means openly they were leaving their houses, as thefts were not there, means that kind of incidents were not there. Such a situation was the result of mainly three factors. Why this kind of incidents were not happening, why people used to left their houses unguarded? Three reasons were there. First reason is the general honesty of the people of this Mauryan administration, they were very honest. Second is efficient administration of the criminal law, as criminal laws were there and the severe punishments were there, so no one was ready to do that kind of any crime. And the Mauryan economy based on productive agriculture and lucrative business and trade. As economy was based on agriculture and trade was profitable, it means all were having more than the requirement, so it was not any kind of requirement for them to do that kind of wrong practices. Then productive agriculture. Megasthenes attests to the fertility of soil. So according to him, soil was very fertile. Why? Due to major irrigation works such as the dams on the Sudarshan Lake at Girnar. So according to him, land was very fertile. Reason was irrigation system. According to a Shastra, amount of tax would depend irrigation facilities, means how much tax will be charged, it was depend upon the irrigation facilities that were provided. If more irrigation facilities are provided to a land portion, from that land portion more tax will be charged. If less irrigation facilities are provided, then less tax will be there, and that range was from 1/3 to 1/6 of the land product. Then lucrative trade, very profitable trade was there. Trade was carried on both by land and the waterways. The royal highway ran from the region nearby Takshila to Patliputra, like highways were there, waterways were also in use. And from the port of Tamralipti, the ships sailed for the east coast, Sri Lanka and Burma, and the Buddhist literature referred to sea voyages from Bharuch, that is in Gujarat, to Babylon. It means national trade was going on by waterways as well as by the road. Similarly, international trade was also going on by sea routes or by waterways. So up to this, their administration is here, and this is very important topic. And after their administration, our next topic is the Dhamma. So first of all, what is Dhamma? Dhamma means dharam, but it was not a particular religion that we are talking, like a Hindu religion, Muslim religion. This was not that kind of religion. So this Dhamma was the Dhamma adopted by Ashoka the Great. So let us start with this. The horrors of a single war, that was Kalinga War. Okay, the single war convinced Ashoka that the chiefest conquest of is the conquest of right and not of might. It means after the war of Kalinga, now Ashoka came to know that what is important. According to him, the important thing is conquest of right, not of might. Might means power. And the sources on Ashoka's Dhamma are his own inscriptions. And from where we get what was Ashoka's Dhamma, we get all the information from the inscriptions of Ashoka only, that are on the stone edicts, displayed at many prominent places, and they consist of 14 major and several minor rock edicts found at 22 locations. Means at 22 locations many stone edicts are there where these inscriptions are that were given by Ashoka, and in those inscriptions everything is written about the Dhamma. And 7 pillar edicts, the cave inscription and other inscriptions are also there. So from these inscription, if question is there, what is the source to reconstruct the Dhamma, that are the inscriptions. Okay, so fundamental principles of Dhamma. According to Ashoka, what was his Dhamma? What were the principles of Ashoka's Dhamma? So if that kind of question is there, then your answer will start from here. Firstly, the meaning. The Dhamma is a Prakrit word, and the Sanskrit word Dhamma have the same meaning. It means Dhamma and Dharma. In Sanskrit, it is Dharma. Dhamma and Dharma having same meaning. And the meaning of this Dhamma never meant exactly religion. As in beginning I told you, this is not a religion like Hindu or Muslim religion. Something different. It implies concepts such as justice, virtue, morality, law, and duty. These are the main things that are the basic principles of Dhamma. So Dhamma or Dharma of Ashoka was based upon these principles. The fundamental principles of Ashoka's Dhamma. Number 1, purity of domestic life. It means domestic life means one person that is living with his wife, or one lady that is living with her husband and their children. Purity is must in their relations. Second is toleration. Toleration here means speak evil of others' religious faith was not accepted. It means not to speak anything wrong against any other person's religious faith. Then ahimsa, that is sanctity of life, means it was must to follow the path of ahimsa. True ceremonials. These are the 4 principles. And Ashoka declared that the true ceremonial was kindness. So what is true ceremony? Like ceremonies, religious ceremonies are there, and worships are there, many more things are there, but according to Ashoka, what is right thing? That is kindness towards the living creatures. and and liberally liberality to ascetics and Brahmins. Ascetics and Brahmins means those who give up their worldly pleasures and those who are moving in search of God. That kind of persons, they must be kind towards them. They here means all the persons, those who wanted to follow Dhamma. Then means adopted for the propagation of Dhamma and the spread of Buddhism. As Ashoka adopted Buddhism, then he started to promote his Dhamma, and for that promotion he adopted some methods. So what was that? Firstly, Ashoka practiced what he preached. So what he was saying, by himself he was doing that. He gave up the royal hunt, also stopped the killing of living creatures for the delicious of the royal kitchen. It means he gave up non-vegetarian food, he gave up hunting, he gave up killing of any living creature. And he followed a policy of religious tolerance and made donations to Brahmins and ascetics of different religious sects. It means his tolerance, his donations were same for other religions also. Second, officers of the state were required to tell people about their duties, and officers that were appointed by Ashoka, it was their duty to tell the people about their duties also, that what they have to follow. Third, Ashoka created a special class of officers that were called as Dhamma Mahamatras, and they were having the duty to enforcing the moral code and looking after the welfare of the people. It means for the welfare of the people and to promote morality between the people. This was the duty of these Dhamma Mahamatras. And Ashokan edicts are mainly religious in character. They required people to cultivate purity of life, to be tolerant to other religious faiths. And it means firstly must be pure in their life and must be tolerant toward other religion and other religious faiths also, to abstain from killing or injuring animals, and to be charitable to all. So to promote these things also, all the Ashokan edicts are there. Means everything was written on Ashokan edicts were related to the purity of life, related to the principles for the people of their kingdom, and to follow non-violence, ahimsa, that kind of things were mentioned. Then royal missionaries were sent to all frontiers of the empire, from all directions, from all the borders. The missionaries were sent. They were sent to Sri Lanka, Syria, Egypt, Macedonia. Why? For the propagation of Dhamma and the spread of Buddhism. It means what he did for the adoption and propagation of Dhamma, he do what he said, and officers were appointed and duties were given to them. Even duties were given to them to aware the common, and edicts were there where duties of the common persons were written, and where it was is a kind of education were given to them, that to be tolerant towards others, and do not injure anyone, don't kill anyone. Then royal missionaries were sent, and these all was the methods or means adopted by Ashoka to propagate, to spread his Dhamma or to spread the Buddhism. And our next topic is Ashoka's place in history. sometime question could be there that Ashoka is known as Ashoka the Great. Why? Or what is Ashoka's place in Indian history? Very important question is there. So just be serious towards this question. Then Ashoka was one of the greatest king in the history of the world. We are not talking about the history of India. He was the greatest king of the history of the world, and he inspired by the zeal of a religious missionary. So by the zeal of religious missionary means strong feeling of religious missionary, means for the betterment, for the welfare of others he was doing, means in according to his dhamma. What was the main thing? The main thing was the welfare of all, and at the same time he never forgot that he was a king as well. So he was not doing only the that kind of the things related to dhamma only. He never forgot that he was a king also. He never neglected his kingdom and his princely duties. It means he was doing all his responsibilities properly. He was not content with more preaching. It means he was not doing only that kind of preachings. He was doing his other business also. Business means administration work also. Then he practiced what he preached. His greatness lay in the fact that he was liberal and generous to those who had a different faith, as I told you earlier, that he told his officers to guide their people, that whether anybody belongs to any other religion or having any different faith, they must be having some kind of same attitude towards them. And in seventh pillar edict, he orders the Dhamma Mahamatras to look after the Brahmins and Ajivikas. It means if it is written on the edict in pillar 7 that they have to, means they means Dhamma Mahamatras, they have to look after these others, Brahmins and Ajivikas, means other type of priest also that are related to other dharmas. It means he was generous to other religion also. During his pilgrimage to the Buddhist places, he made generous donations to Brahmins and ascetic of other religious sects. So during the pilgrimage means whenever he was moving to other Buddhist places, then he was giving donation to the persons related to other religions, the Brahmins, the ascetics. It means he was very great person. He gave up warfare, he gave up hunting, he gave up cruelty, he adopted dhamma, he became a follower of Buddhism, and he started to promote Buddhism. But he never forgot that he is a king also. For the betterment of his kingdom, he was capable administrator. He appointed officials. He appointed Dhamma Mahamatras. He sent the missionaries for the promotion of his Dhamma, and even the persons related to other religions were having respectful place, and donations were given to them also. It means he never differentiate between one particular religion and another religion. His aim was only the goodness of his people, the peace, law, and order in the empire, and the prosperity of a common person. That's why he is known as Ashoka the Great. And if this particular line you wanted to add, what is his place in history? So he was the greatest king in the history of the world. So I think now it is clear how to write down the answer of this question. Don't just stick with this paragraph. Okay, the things that I told you, you have to add all these things in your answer. Then is the decline of a modern empire. Let us have a little look about this also. Question could be there, what are the reasons behind the decline of Mauryan Empire? So why that mighty empire came to an end? So the main reasons are written here. We will start with that first point, that the empire was very vast. As I know now, the pan India was under the control of Mauryans. So very vast empire was there, very big kingdom was there, and it needed a strong hand to hold it together. But the Ashoka successors were weak. It means other kings after Ashoka, they were not capable to hold a strong hand or strong hold over that vast empire. They were weak. Then the enormous expenditure on the army and payment to the state officials created a financial crisis for the empire. They were having huge army, they were having number of officials, and to give them payments, it was again very difficult task. And it seems that the later kings failed to collect taxes also. It means they were not capable, as I told you, so people refused to pay taxes properly. So now when taxes are not collected, it means less money they are having, but more expenditures they were having. So therefore they could not bear the cost of maintaining a large army. Third, the chief of Kalinga and the southern provinces revolted. So Kalinga was conquered by Ashoka, and southern provinces were also under their control now. But after Ashoka, as successors were weak, so the chiefs of Kalinga and other southern provinces, means other areas of southern India, their chiefs revolted against the rulers and they freed themselves from the control of the Mauryas. And fourth one is Ashoka's successors could not pay attention to safeguarding the northwestern frontiers. So southern area, they were against them, they revolted, and the area that was the northwestern frontiers, the Greek kings began to invade the northern western India. As in the beginning of this chapter, I told you that the Greek general, they just wanted to gain that areas that were once conquered by their ruler. And after Ashoka, those particular northwestern areas again started to be free from the control of a Mauryan empire. And it was under these circumstances that Brihadrat, the last Mauryan ruler, he was killed by a Mauryan general. His name was Pushyamitra Sangha. And when he killed him, next dynasty, that was the Sangha dynasty, was started. And it might have taken place in 187 BC. And this was the end of the Mauryan empire. So with this, our chapter is over here. Just listen this video properly, carefully, and if any doubt is there, you can message me. Thank you.